I think this is my opportunity to bring some news about the current college, and we'll have an opportunity later to catch up with some news about the wider college community. You may know that we produce occasional short videos about the life of the college. Some of you sitting here have been in some of them. You find them all on YouTube if you bother to look. We include them in our social media promotion and other things. I think the latest one is about the way we express our current values. And so we thought, as it's fairly new, we'd show it now. So I hope that's what's going to happen.
The heart of who we are is a passion for God through Jesus Christ. And the thing that matters to us most is developing that relationship in people.
Everything is about what is God doing, what is God saying, what's in Scripture.
Having a passion about your intimacy with God, your relationship with God, is the bedrock. It's the start of everything else.
The way college helped me was the regular rhythm of spirituality that was there week in, week out. It was like breathing in and breathing out.
I think that focus on personal discipleship and being a disciple before you can lead other people in discipleship is a really strong focus at the college.
It's giving God our entire lives, our whole lives to Him.
If God's called you, you cannot do anything but go with it and then see what happens, and that's the life of faith.
My own spiritual practices in terms of my prayer life, my Bible reading has just been brought alive by this journey, but also how that manifests in who I am as a person, as a father, as a husband, and as a minister of a church as well.
They wanted all of us to have a heart for mission and to understand that ultimately our call is to be a disciple that makes disciples, and that's the main thing, and that we need to keep the main thing the main thing.
We tend to do a bit of everything really, but it is also having that keen awareness of that global, the kind of local, and us personal, and I like the balance of all of that because ultimately we're a part of the greater church family that are across the world.
We looked at the early Baptists and heard about their radical discipleship and what lengths they went to spread the gospel and to share Jesus with other people, and that kind of stuff inspires you to think, this is why I'm here and this is why I'm a minister and that's what I want to achieve in my ministry.
I was in the army for 11 years previously, and I've made stronger bonds with people on this than I did in the military for sure.
It's a safe space to be able to talk about the things that we're really enjoying in ministry and the things that we're struggling with.
We care for each other pastorally, we look after each other, we check out on each other, we pray for each other.
I genuinely don't think I would have made it through formation without this community around me.
Academic excellence is right at the heart of the college.
I love the lectures where the Scripture's just opened wide to you and you get to go into the deeper, it's just fascinating, and I find it really exciting.
We're not talking about everybody becoming first-class academics. We're talking about everyone who comes here fulfilling their potential.
There's so much more that God has got to teach me and us, and He's given us a community to do that in, and that's what Bristol Baptist College really is.
Spent far too much money on that drone shot, but I think it's going to get used in other videos as well. I should have thanked John and the band and Ali and Rose for leading our prayers so helpfully. Thank you. So you will know that last year we launched the new college history that Ruth wrote with Anthony. We still have a few copies left and they are on sale at the back. Let me encourage you to check out if you don't have a copy already, but of course you do. But another book was launched last September, put together by a current colleague and a former colleague of mine. They were Helen Painter and Peter Hatton, and Helen's going to say a few words about that book now. But she won't be able to resist saying something about the Centre for the Study of Bible and Violence as well.
You know me so well, Steve. Hello. I'll talk about the CSBV in a minute. At the very beginning of September every year, the staff teams from all the Baptist colleges get together for a time of shared learning and conversation. On this September just gone, a group of us took the opportunity to present Steve with what is known as a Festschrift, a collaborative book written by a group of people in response to and appreciation for his work. It had been a long time in the planning. My predecessor, Peter Hatton, and I began inviting contributions 2 years previously. We'd received enthusiastic agreement from those we approached, and we're very grateful to Larry Kreitzer of Regent's Park College, who published it for us, and for our own Sophie Atkinson, who designed the cover for us. And there's a bit of a multi-layered pun thing going on the cover, so you can have a look at that later and work it out for yourself. It's no easy thing to spring a surprise like that. Many of the contributors came along to be part of the presentation on that day last September. Think This Is Your Life, for those of you who are old enough to remember that. Steve's wife, Becca, came along, and I expressed to her my anxiety that he would see people gathering and smell a rat. No, he won't, she said. He's thick. And I thought, are we speaking about the same man? I could use many adjectives for Steve, but thick is not one of them. But actually, Becca was right. And even though he twice stumbled into the Regent's Park Senior Common Room, where I was convening that group of surprise guests, he didn't work it out at all, apparently. So perhaps thick should be added to my list of adjectives. Oh dear, just while he's leaving, I'll be losing my job, I think. The first thing that Steve said when we presented the book to him after "Oh no" was this: "I haven't published enough, I don't deserve this." And in my opinion, he was partly right and partly wrong. First, the wrong bit, because everyone agrees that Steve deserves this. All of our contributors jumped at the chance to be part of the project, to honour and acknowledge the huge contribution of thought that he has made into the national conversation. The 2 people we invited who had to decline did so with enormous regret. And we know that we could have invited as many people again, and they would all have said yes. Steve's wisdom, his integrity, his contribution to Baptist life both nationally and locally cannot be overstated. And this, of course, is reflected in his recent election to serve as Baptist Union President in 2024-25. It's rare, I think, to encounter someone held in as universally high regard as Stephen Finnemore. It's even more rare for that person to be as humble and self-deprecating as he is. And that brings me to where I think he was correct when he said, "I haven't published enough." Well, I wouldn't dream of echoing the note of insufficiency there, but I would agree with him that he hasn't published hugely yet. There is his excellent book on violence in Revelation, and a number of really valuable shorter pieces, chapters in books and so on. But the reason Steve hasn't published widely is because of his steadfast and determined commitment to serve the churches by the training of Baptist ministers with all his heart, and his equal and converse determination not to build his own reputation or to further his own research to the detriment of that calling. And that means that there have been winners and losers. The winners are the many students that Steve has trained and invested in, who've benefited from his wisdom and been shaped by his integrity. The winners are Steve's colleagues, who receive his relentless support and his unstinting availability. The winners are the local churches he has moderated or taught in. The winner is the National Baptist family, who have benefited from his quiet and unassuming leadership in a variety of forms, not least the Baptist Steering Group and the BU Council. And the losers are the wider theological communities who have not yet received the full benefits of the mighty Finnemore brain. And most importantly, that brain in combination with a heart that is wholly given over to the glory of God. We hope very much that in his retirement he will be able to use the opportunity to write more for the blessing of that community and beyond. And with all that said, I can't see him, but I know that he is squirming right now. So let me tell you about the book. So Peter and I entitled it Attending to the Margins, because we felt that this captured something of the common thread that runs through a great deal of Steve's work. Let me just turn to the relevant page I wanted to draw some things from. The word margins came to our minds, not simply because he supports Wimbledon AFC, which is currently, I think, residing near the bottom of League One. Is that still true? Bottom of League Two, right. Definitely margins then. His work for community projects in both London and Peru were with people who were deeply marginalised, either by their societies or by the wider global community. And of course, we Baptists have always, from proud conviction, occupied a place at the margins of power. Indeed, Steve's familiarity with Girard has drawn the attention to many of us to the forces in every society which marginalise and scapegoat those who are kind of like us but somehow different, while propagating the lie that those scapegoats deserve everything that's coming to them. And so we grouped the essays into 3 broad sections. First of all, we had a small collection picking up on Steve's anthropological and sociological research around marginalisation. Have a paper which this may be a unique thing, which he unwittingly co-authored with John Heathershaw, who engaged him in intriguing conversation, then, what's the word I'm looking for, then recorded it, with Steve's permission actually, he recorded it, but then annotated it and published it under both their names. So Steve may be the only person who's unknowingly contributed to their own Festschrift. And then we have a paper by Rob Ellis, who will be joining us later, who writes about Wimbledon AFC, and a fascinating piece. And I have absolutely no interest in football, but I still enjoyed reading the chapter, which I thought was superb. The next paper is by Paul Fiddis, who I'm sure needs no introduction, who wrote about unicorns. Yes, it's all in this Festschrift. Then some of our own contributions. Peter Hatton draws upon his background in English literature to consider the paradox that Girard's insights, known by only a lunatic fringe, in inverted commas, should find resonance in the English playwrights. There's a really diverse collection here. And then John Weaver, former principal of the South Wales Baptist College, offers a reflection on the role of climate change in driving impoverishments and people movements in Peru. So that's the first section. Second section is a collection of biblical essays, broadly reflecting on the theme of marginalisation. I've got a paper in there on Numbers 5, which is the ritual for testing the virtue of a wife. Steve Carter, who I saw a minute ago, is just there, evaluates the claims of post-colonial biblical theorists in regard to the first letter of Peter. Then 2 papers on the book of Revelation, which of course is a specialism of Steve's. One from Jamie Davis, our colleague across the Downs at Trinity, and one from former colleague Ernest Lucas. And then our third collection of essays, based around topics relevant to Baptist and Baptistic ecclesiology. Anthony Clark from Regent's Park writes reflection on Christian leadership, actually inspired by some words that Steve gave in a conversation on one occasion. One of Steve's current PhD students, Jeff Jacobson, explores some of the ambiguities of the first clause of the Baptist Declaration of Principle. Then Larry Kreitzer, who I mentioned a few moments ago, investigates the first recorded case of a man being disciplined by a Baptist church for some sort of homosexual impropriety. Then a co-written paper by Steve's former colleagues former colleague Sean Murray-Williams and current colleague Stuart Murray-Williams, who apply sociological insight to the task of ministerial formation and the practice of ministry. Then a paper by another of Steve's current PhD students, Gail Richards, who considers the response made by BMS World Mission to the Black Lives Matter movement. And finally, my colleague Tim Welsh, who explores the practical theology of the renowned systematic theologian James W. McClendon Jr. So we are pleased and proud to offer this collection of essays to our friend and colleague, and we hope he has enjoyed reading them, and we hope that each time he peruses them in years to come, he'll recall the honour and affection in which he is held by so many. And then if I change tack briefly, because Steve's asked me to report briefly on the work of the Centre for the Study of Bible and Violence in the past year. And I continue to feel like I'm running on a conveyor belt trying to keep up with what's going on, which is very exciting. Since we were last together, we held our 2022 conference, which was held online, and it was centred around the questions of trauma and criminal justice, and obviously a theological exploration of those. We've now held our second online series of Lent lectures, which on this occasion was looking at a series of a number of newly released books, and we got the author in dialogue with a respondent each time. All of these things are available on our YouTube channel and freely available. You can access them at your will. I think we've had 3 books published as a centre. 1 or 2 other people's monographs have come out as well. I didn't think to bring those with me. But 3 published collections are out, and I've put them up for inspection if anyone's interested later. A book that I co-edited with colleague Maria Power called Violence and Peace in Sacred Texts, which looks at its interreligious perspectives, each faith reflecting on their own violence and peace in their own sacred texts. And then 2 combined volumes looking at different aspects of biblical violence. So those are out, and do feel free to have a little browse if you're interested. We've now got 2 podcast series on the go. Guns and God, which you may have dipped into in the past, is currently resting, but all those episodes are available. We've now got a new podcast series being hosted by my colleague Ashley Hibbard, who's discussing with others various elements of questions around biblical violence. We've got 3 blogs now, in addition to kind of our eclectic standard blog, if you like, with a blog looking at how preachers can operate non-violently in the pulpit when they are preaching on texts that could be used to cause harm. And then the other new blog is called Hostility, Hymnody, Harmony. I got it right. And that's looking at violence in church music. So do have a look at those if you're interested on our website. 2 more things to mention, and I'm going to shut up. One is that the work that I've done around domestic abuse and the weaponisation of scripture in domestic abuse, which you may know I wrote a book on, and that is available at the back. But we've got a grant to produce a series of videos to enable those questions to be studied by church small groups. I think there's a slide up there, which, and if you're interested, do speak to me and I'll tell you where you can access them. So a series of 6 videos looking around questions of domestic abuse in the church. And finally, warmly invite you to our conference, which is taking place next month in person for the first time since COVID, and online as well. And it's being held jointly with our friends at the Bethlehem Bible College and the Christ at the Checkpoint conference there. So we're bringing some world-class Palestinian theologians over, engaging them with some world-class British theologians, and I think the conversation is going to be fascinating and I hope really helpful. So please do consider joining us for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. It is remarkable how that ministry has grown, and every time I see something come out, I'm always just so grateful that it refers to our college as part of as the host of which the centre is based. So really grateful for that. I thought you were going to talk about the book, not about me, but thank you anyway for those kind words. I think I'm going to say that I decided a while ago that this year would be the right time to step aside. It was partly to do with reaching state pension age, partly to do with this process of succession planning that we've had to go through with other colleagues coming up to state retirement age and wanting to stage those departures rather than have a whole group of people go at once. So I wanted to avoid too many changes of the core team at one time. And it's partly to do with the fact that even with my limited self-awareness, I'm aware I still love the role, and I think the college remains a happy and purposeful community. And I think that I could help it to stay that way, but I'm not sure that I've still got the energy or the drive to innovate or to adapt, or to keep things fresh. And so I think it's time for someone else to have a go. in the end, you can't block the best job that you can imagine for too long. I think 17 years is probably enough. So we started planning a couple of years ago for me stepping away, and the recruitment process started before Christmas. I was so pleased that while we didn't attract a huge number of applications, we had a really strong field. And the outcome was the appointment of the Reverend Dr. Peter Morden. Peter is currently pastor at Cornerstone Baptist Church in Leeds. He's a distinguished church historian. He's written on discipleship. He's quite well known in our college because he's an honorary research fellow with us. Has been that for several years. Helps supervise a couple of our doctoral students. And obviously being an honorary research fellow with us is the most prestigious academic achievement of his career. But I should probably mention that in the past, he was vice principal and acting principal of another place. We hope he'll be starting in July, and he and I will have a handover period. But he's already getting involved with stuff. He wanted to be here today, but that proved impossible. The other major team change that is going on is that we have a new librarian. Caroline is here. We're really pleased that you've started already and that you have a handover period with Mike. Welcome aboard. But Mike Brearley, Mike, you've been brilliant. You know already that I think this, but he's transformed our library. He's rearranged the stock. He's reclassified the collection. He's arranged for the Anabaptist collection from the London Mennonite Centre to be incorporated. He's sorted out the archives. During the pandemic, he operated a COVID-safe postal service for those who needed books. He's arranged for all our students to have access to additional digital library services. At the same time, he's kept the collection at the college up to date. And he's been really helpful with students and staff with all our inquiries, and acting as a brilliant detective, tracking down books and articles and even occasionally fact-checking professors of history. So we owe Mike an enormous debt of gratitude, as we do to his wife Fran, who many of you know served as college manager until a couple of years ago. They're moving, I think, soon to Shropshire, if I've got that right. And they go with our thanks and our prayers and our very good wishes. Mike, thank you so much for all that you've brought to us. We're grateful to you. And one other staff change that I've remembered, I'm getting on. Our children, youth and family tutor, Claire Hooper, who's part-time with us, is going to be co-team regional minister team leader in Southern Counties. And her college hours are going to be shared with Glenda Chadwick Down. She works for the South West Baptist Association as a mission enabler with children, youth and families. So I think that means both the regional ministers anywhere in the country who have this particular specialism will be part of our college team. So we're really pleased about that. Other than these changes, I think it's fair to say that college life is steady. We have a cohort of just under 30 ministerial students. Signs are looking promising for next year's intake. Just this morning I was hearing about a couple that I didn't know about already, so that's encouraging. There's a handful of children, youth and family students, half a dozen people taking the Disciple Makers course, a good number on the taught theology programs, and remarkably we now have between 15 and 20 doctoral students working at the college, which is just wonderful to be, a community of formation and an academic community all at the same time. It's great. And then there's the Saturday programme. Different versions run in Bristol and Exeter. And while they're still recovering from the pandemic, the numbers are growing. I think we have about 30 across the two centres. Now, speaking of the pandemic, you may remember that before the lockdown, we used to organise overseas trips for students in partnership with BMS World Mission. Sadly, those stopped while COVID was a bigger threat than it apparently is now. And the BMS is reviewing all its activities and have not wanted to relaunch those. So there's been no trip for a few years, and we decided that we would organise our own, and we wanted to have one that we could take as many students as possible on. And so a group of 20 went to Israel and Palestine on a trip that grew out of our relationship with the Bethlehem Bible College. And we've asked a couple of students who made the trip to tell us a little about their experience. So Jade is going to come and, to steal the words from the song, Rose Again.
Yes, we had the absolute honour and privilege of recently going to the Holy Land together. For me personally, I'd never actually wanted to go before, but as soon as I heard that we were staying in Bethlehem and we were going to feel some of the reality of the current situation there, I was in. It was an interesting place, an interesting space, and it was interesting to observe how people engage with the whole land. We spent 10 days doing a lot of running and walking and driving because it's quite a big place, which is something we all recognised our naivety of before going. So the trip enabled us to learn so much context for how we read the word, how we understand things that have happened in the lifetime of Jesus. It was interesting to see people from all around the world worshipping in one place. And I'll be honest, I was quite critical of this before I went. I didn't want to go to the sites that are just touristy. It took me a couple of days to realise people were there to worship, and it was interesting to observe and watch, and to learn about different sacramental theologies that were held by all who gathered in this place. We spent a couple of nights up in Nazareth and near Galilee, and we did a lot of venturing around the areas there. We took on a few extra spots, and a few of the places we were meant to go didn't quite happen. Because again, it turns out they're quite far apart from one another. But then we made our way down to Bethlehem, a journey that we watched the landscape change and the feel of a place change as we went through a number of checkpoints. We actually stayed in Bethlehem Bible College, which was quite near to one of those checkpoints. Being there meant we felt some of the tension of the reality of lives for people there. It was great to do and to experience. And our ask was, what can we do? And they asked us to become ambassadors. So that's hopefully something of what we are now. We had 3 different tour guides throughout the whole time there. Each one had a different reality of life in the Holy Land. It was great to hear their stories, particularly the ones from those on the coach. While most people were asleep, I can say we had some great stories. We got to hear the lives of people, the faith, the very real living hope. We got to meet with the living stones. And the thing that caught me the most was someone said, many people from all around the world gather to find peace in this place. And I live 500 metres away and I cannot access that same space. That was something to be held, that was something to hold. But we also got to experience a very real living hope, a passion for peace and for justice. A love for neighbour that I don't think we can fully grasp in this nation. A love for neighbour that goes beyond oneself and is purely the love of God transcending. If you get a chance to go, I encourage you to, and I look forward to the upcoming conference. I haven't booked in yet, but I will. Because actually, again, that's a continuation of some of the things that we've learned and some of the things we've experienced. But if you do get to go, visit Bethlehem. Stay in Bethlehem. We received such a welcome. We were there during Eid, at the end of Passover as well. And as we walked home from one of our evening trips, the amount of people in their cars that just said, "Welcome, welcome." It was wonderful, and I highly recommend it to you.
It's a good thing I bought props, isn't it? I don't know about anyone else on the trip, but I have spent the last week or so fielding questions from my very lovely church saying, "Did you have a lovely time? Wasn't it wonderful? Wasn't it nice?" No, it was not nice. It was wonderful, kind of. It was good. It was worthwhile. It was fascinating, but it wasn't nice. I thought before I went that I would stand on the banks of the Galilee, my toes dipping in the waters that Jesus walked upon, and I would have a sense of his presence that I couldn't possibly access at home. But of course, what I discovered, Disney style, was that Jesus was always with me right here. And if that sounds facile, I'm sorry, but it was kind of true. It was in many ways quite hard to access Jesus as we did walk briskly between many different places as we jumped on and off coaches and we dodged all the other coach parties. I have something of an issue with the fairy grottos that have been erected over some places of beauty, even though they have preserved them, and that of course is incredibly important. But what we did get, certainly what I take away, is that sense of hope that Jade was talking about, the sense of hope and God's love, which is tangible in some places, and perhaps more importantly, in some people. So my props, since I brought them. This is a nativity scene. So far, so standard. We have Holy Family. It's made out of Bethlehem olive wood. It is beautiful. It does, of course, also have the wall, what the Israeli government calls the security wall, although it offers precious little extra security to people of Israel, and definitely none to the, hang on, I had it for a preach on Sunday, 14,364 to date Palestinians who have been displaced just by the building of the wall. So on the reverse, we have the wise men who, if they were to try and visit Jesus being born today, would not be able to because of this security wall. And that doesn't sound like hope. So that's why I also brought this, also made out of Bethlehem olive wood, a thing of beauty. And what, just you might not be able to see, is she's an angel. It is an angel, and it is carrying a marble. And the marbles are collected by people after riots on the street, because that's what the Palestinian kids throw at tanks. Little bits of stone and marbles, but these marbles are collected up and they are turned into a symbol of hope, a symbol of peace, something that is of joy, something that will change the world. So that's what I took away with me. A certain amount of sadness and desperation that the land that we call holy is in some ways anything but. But I remembered that following in Jesus' footsteps probably doesn't mean paddling in the Galilee, quite so much as doing the things that Jesus spent most of his time doing, that is, holding the hand of the shunned, walking with the oppressed, and speaking up for those who have no voice. So yes, go, but go to Bethlehem.
Thank you. So in conclusion, news about the college, I think we're in pretty good heart. I think the environment in which we operate is changing constantly, but I feel like we're in a good place to respond to the continuing challenges, and I have great confidence in God and therefore confidence in the future of his college. that will continue to contribute to the work that he's engaged in throughout the world.